Everyone on the committee is here. So let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. So moved. Do we have a second? All right, we have a second from Supervisor Berg. And any discussion? Okay, let's vote. Everyone vote. Who votes aye, just vote verbally if you say aye. Aye. Motion carried. So we'll go to the discussion items. Let's start with the review and update on renovation and replacement. Because there were a few things that some of us thought of after the meeting to add.
Yeah, so in your committee packets, you should have the notes from the last meeting, right? So we thought we'd start with renovation and see if there's any additional strengths and limitations that you thought of since the last meeting that you'd like to add to the list, or if there's any corrections, if I didn't capture things correctly in the notes, please let me know that as well.
Yeah, I think is there room to ask more questions about these options? Yeah.
I don't know any answers, but
Yeah,
Okay.
should we start with the questions?
Yeah.
Let's start with
Yeah.
questions then.
There should be more questions. It's kind of a review and update. So if you guys have some other items you would like to add on, but there's no more further questions on these items.
Oh, we can't?
Well, that's not. I mean, you're just reviewing and updating, so you're not really going into full detail on this item.
Follow the agenda.
Yeah, we'll put it on the agenda. for
We'll,
next-
yeah, we can put it on for next time.
thanks, Michael. Voice from above.
Really. You right there.
Okay, well, I have for the renovation, I have a strength, an obvious one that we missed. And that would be that we would not be disrupting the lives of the residents who are there. Well, aside from going through a renovation and living through it, but at least they wouldn't have to move. And then also there would be the value of the renovated building. Anyone else have any strengths? No?
Strengths.
Weaknesses on the reno?
Yes,
Supervisor Schulteis?
thank you. Both on the renovation and the replacement. So it's, again, it was obvious. We talked about the positive things about the strengths of our staff and how excellent they are and committed and whatever. But the other obvious thing right now is the staffing shortage. And that it is
Yes.
difficult to find CNAs. They're just not going to school for it. So there's that staffing shortage. So it would be both for renovation and replacement.
Anything else? Does anyone have anything else to add on renovation? I guess we're ready to go to what we want to add for the new build. And for a strength for the new build is the value of the, I'm going to say property because it's the complex.
Yeah.
And then, so Supervisor Schulteis had her weakness with the staffing shortage that's kind of across the board. Countrywide, worldwide.
I'm just using S for strength and L for limitation.
Yeah. can
Anyone
add,
else? Yeah,
For limitations, I think there is a regulatory market or a regulatory factor or risk that regulations keep increasing in this industry, and that adds to costs and burden for continuing to operate. So that really should go under renovation too.
yeah.
I'm gonna look back at something else here too, see if it jogs any other.
And then actually I have one more strength that goes to both of them. The Medicaid reimbursements are increasing. Starting January 1 of 2023. They're going from 77% to 91%.
In January 2020.
Yeah,
Is that confirmed? Is that?
right,
passed?
that's confirmed.
Okay. That's good news.
Any other strengths or limitations anyone can think of? No, I think we've got it then for those two options, but I'm glad we had the opportunity to add these, to think about it a little further after the meeting and to be able to add these.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, so then I guess we're ready to move on to the demolition of the Samaritan Health Center, which plays into several of the scenarios.
Okay, good afternoon. You have a handout where you can see that, and Mary's coming to the rescue, or we can get that a little larger. Oh, sorry. Okay, so let's look at and of course with demolition, what our game plan is, should we need to use that part of that option? What we're trying to do is eliminate the health center, and that's the skilled nursing and the assisted living, our CBRF, and maintain the RCAC. Today, they're connected. So it's not only doing the demo work and raising the health center, but it's removing that connector and then putting a new face on. And there are other pieces that when the time comes, we'll have the county board have a discussion as to what extent we do. What I tried to do is put together a estimate, and I'm very thankful to Roy Hartman from purchasing, he was able to talk to several people who are in that business, had them look at the building. So it's a good estimate, but the estimate is probably 2 years old. And that's sort of like everything we hear, that prices are going up, but at least we have a ballpark understanding. So when I look at 1 through 6, the first one is the initial asbestos and lead-based paint testing. I'm not expecting a whole lot. When the county board opted for the remodeling in 2008, they did a very nice job of doing a lot of abatement at that time. there is still asbestos in the building, but not as much as one would think. And so I believe that a lot of it has been completed. So the abatement process, we put in an estimate of about 170,000. And knowing that that number could triple if they ran into all kinds of issues with it and the difficulty in being able to abate the areas. The demolition itself, we put an estimate of $1.5 million. And that would be to take the entire building down and remove all the materials, including the basement, not to fill in over the basement structure, but take everything out. The utilities, storm drainage, and site restoration, what we're trying to do is at the end of the day, we would like to have that property reused and not as a brownfield, but rather as a clean, clear field. And so the estimate for that one piece is $225,000. And then I look at the health center and the fields RCAC separation process, and that we're estimating at about 400,000. What we're looking at is that if we wish to have the RCAC freestanding and with the possibility of selling it, we would want to put in a more full kitchen. Today, we don't have that. We have warming plates and we deliver from the central kitchen. If we were replacing the skilled nursing and the CBRF, our intent was to deliver meals from the main site. But if we decide that we're going to attempt to sell the RCAC, we would put in a full kitchen. Also the engineering for the building separation, the layout, the storm sewer drainage, site restoration, inspection, permitting cost, we're estimating about 300,000. So today we're looking at 2,600,000. Any questions about that?
I've got
Yes,
one.
sir.
Are all of these these estimates, are they all 2 years old? Or are there some that are,
Approximately two. I worked with Roy Hartman to try to guesstimate some of the estimates because we didn't know the direction. I didn't hire an architectural firm. I did have AG Architecture look at it, but did not retain them to look at that building as to for the kitchen, for example. So we're putting in educated guesses. I used John Cronin from AG Architecture. I used Tony, who's an engineer under him, as to helping me with the estimates, along with Roy.
And does that building have the space for a kitchen and it's just a matter of, building it out with the right equipment?
It's a good question. Depending on the extent of the kitchen, we could put the equipment in as the space would require. If we want to put a full dishwasher and things like that, we would expand out the one bay window.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions on the demo? Okay, well, I guess, and that does play into several of our options here that we have, so. I don't know, Paul, do we need to do the strengths and limitations, because depending on, should we, because I mean, it plays into several of the options. It's, not an option, it's not a standalone option, but we should still do it, you think? Okay.
So just be consistent, right?
Well, see, when I was looking at this, the way I kind of saw this. We have 5 or 6 space options. A couple of them would involve keeping the existing building. A couple would involve vacating the existing building. Depending on which we would choose, we would then either choose to demolish or sell the existing building. So it seems kind of strange to do strengths and limitations on that as if it was a standalone option. That makes sense? Because, like, one of our options is to just close Samaritan. If we did that, we could sell the building or demo it. One of our options is to build a new facility in, on the north side of our campus here. If we did that, we could demolish the building or sell it.
So
But demolishing the building isn't really a standalone option.
it's almost a secondary.
Part of, yeah.
It's like a second decision.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make, I don't know,
Yeah, it
what's
makes
your,
sense to me.
Right,
yeah,
I don't see any pros or cons of demolishing it. It's kind of just
it's part of
added
it.
information for our other choices.
Yeah, added information and definitely pricing.
Yes.
yeah.
I do have a question, Linda. If
Okay,
the RCAC is sold, what happens to the money for the sale of that? Is that used for the demolition process, or is that separate, or where does that monies go to after it's sold?
Well, it would go back to the general fund, and the county board would determine how they would spend the money and where they would get it from for the whole demolition process. So you would have a decision making of deciding, do you want that to transfer immediately over? There are no strings attached like licensures and what have you to
Mhm.
worry about with the state. If we don't use it or in such a manner, it would have to go back to the state or the feds. There's no such provision. So it would be entirely up to the county board.
Thank you.
Yeah.
okay, anything else? Anyone? Okay, so in that case, then I guess we can move on to the option of closing up Samaritan campus.
First thing I did was, this is a very tough option, and the county board in the past expressed that to just close would be a very tough option for all the Washington County citizens. And so we know that, but we're not doing our due diligence unless we explore what are some of the pieces, components to closing. And so the first thing I wanted to do was have you have a chance. Now, this was lifted from one of the early reports in the task force. So you've had that to look at what the population looked like in different age groups from 2010, and then another snapshot in 2040. And the area of concentration today is really with the baby boomers. And the oldest baby boomer was born in 1946, who today is 76 years old. And the youngest baby boomer was born in 1964, who today is 58 years old. In 2040, when you look at these projected numbers, know that at that point, those living, the oldest would be 94 years old, and the youngest would be 76 years old. So this is just a snapshot of 1 year, 2040, what it would look like. We pretty much have gone our sweet spot for nursing homes, for example, is 83 years old. Now we have them in their 50s and we have them at 100, but generally speaking, seniors at about 83 years of age end up. So it's about 7 years from today that we're looking at the first population hitting the skilled nursing. So if by 2040 compared to 2010, 85 and older, we go from 118,000 to 283. If you look at that next bracket from 65 to 84 years of age, in 2010, it was 658, and now in 2040, we're at 1,250,000. So we know there will be a population explosion during that time of seniors, and there will be a need to address housing of some type, senior housing. Any other questions that you see from this handout? Okay, but this is a chapter 50 resident relocation requirement, and it's a basic chart that they show all the reasons when you need to relocate more than 5 residents from a facility, what it falls into, what category. If you look at the green area, the center facility intends to close. This is where we would get into a number of regulations that we will be faced with. Number one, there's a 146-page regulation for just closure. And that's something to keep in mind as we go through the process. That's in addition to what the skilled nursing home is under with these regulations. Not counting the assisted living, RCAC and CBRF. So there are a lot of regulations, and years ago, it was easier to find placement than it is today. I like what was said earlier about there is a staffing crisis, and we have to keep that in mind. Any questions about this? Is more for your own information to look at. It's just a matter of all the different agencies that we will need to contact and work with. The state of Wisconsin Bureau of Quality Assurance will come on campus and start observing what goes on with the individuals. People think in the nursing home that if you close today, we would call them and have them come and pick up their loved one. I keep reassuring people that is not the case. If they're in our skilled nursing facility, we are obligated to help the family find placement and a secure, safe placement and a proper placement. And when we don't do our job, the state and the feds will help encourage us through forfeitures of fines and what have you. So trust me, we will follow it to the letter of the law, helping secure placement. There is not a requirement as to a certain distance that the placement must be secured. So we would have the ability to look at the entire state of Wisconsin. But we would definitely not try to look at a greater area. We would begin to look at first our own Washington County, and then we would start going to the adjacent counties.
And do you have, I guess this would have to be basically a guess, but if you could give us kind of a guess or an estimate of how much time you think that would take with the number of people that we have?
I'm gonna go through that list. That's a very good question. If you go to the next page and screen, I tried to break down some of the questions and concerns we would have. The first two bullets addresses the relocation manual and the facility closure F tags, which mean this is what the red book talks about as to what the state will be looking at. Are we doing the following? Then when I start to look at the skilled nursing facilities in Washington County, what I find is that we have 3 other skilled nursing facilities, and they are licensed at 90 beds at Cedar Lake Health and Rehabilitation Center. The Pavilion has 106 licensed beds. Virginia Highlands has 121 licensed beds. I'm not certain where they are with the census. If they're anything like Samaritan, we have 131 licensed beds, but we don't have staff that could possibly care for that many. In fact, today I have 43 skilled nursing residents in-house. I have 5 at the hospital that we will take back when they're ready to come back. So, and we are struggling with our staff. Staffing is the biggest problem that we have in this whole solution. So regardless of the option, staffing is a major issue. All right, so going on to that, when I look at the 4th bullet, today's census of 43 plus 5, the 43 end up with 2 Medicare. That's a short-term stay. Chances are, if we close today, by the time we finish, they would be discharged. That would not be a problem. The Medicare Advantage, again, 1, that would not be a problem. The partnerships, we don't have any. The Optum A1, we would not have a problem. Nursing homes would take them. Medicaid, this is our first problem. 17, that will become extremely difficult to find placement for the 17. I don't see the other 3 nursing homes in Washington County jumping for the chance to take the 17. But at least it's a smaller number. It's not 100. So then the hospice T19, again, that would not be a problem. Family care hospice would not be a problem of 1. The family care 15, now that's our second problem. So we're looking at 32 placements. That would be the bulk of our difficulties in placement. I have 5 private, that would not be a problem. And so basically, to answer your question is that I'm estimating 6 to 12 months to find placement. It used to be 3 to 4 months, you could pretty well find placement. Today, it's a whole different story. And to begin with, according to the guidelines, the state of Wisconsin needs 2 months from the time they receive the official notice, we're closing. We stop any admissions, but they need 2 months. Then I need a month to notify the families so they have a chance to understand what's going on and that their loved one will be moving. I'm not certain at this time if I can do those two concurrently, or if I have to first wait for the state in the 2 months, and then the third month, I can send the notice to the residents. But I'll know all that once the time comes, if it comes. The CBRF, we have
Linda.
26.
Oh,
Oh,
we have a
I'm
question
sorry.
here, Supervisor
Yes.
Schultheis.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's okay. Before you move off of the point of the idea of the facility and moving them, let's see, 32. What is the difference in payer mix from Medicaid to family care? Isn't family care a
Very
type of
similar.
Medicaid? Is one more than the other?
Very, very, very similar.
Okay,
Very depends on the unique contracts,
okay,
but very similar.
okay.
Good question. And what was brought up is that in 2022, we received 77% of the actual costs to render care, daily care. In 2023, it will be 91% of the actual cost. It's still not a break even. It's still not 110 or 115% to interest the private sector. It's still 91. So it's saying you want to take this person and we'll pay you 91 cents for every dollar you spend to care for that person. It's not a good deal.
But is there federal money on top of that?
No,
That
federal
includes it?
money is 55% of Medicaid.
Okay,
45% is actually with the state. That's one of the perplexing issues that I fought for 45 years. And that is, if the state would raise the amount of Medicaid, 55%, the feds are covering. And why we have to be such a low reimbursement state makes no sense to me.
And then building on the idea of currently, we aren't refusing or not taking new admissions, I guess is a way to put it. Are we required to admit new patients? Since we're in such a transitional time, would it make sense not to be receiving new patients at this time? Or how?
At this time, we have 4 employees with COVID, so we're not admitting.
Okay.
We will take the 5 back,
Mhm.
but we're not admitting at this time.
And
The hospitals are pretty filled, looking for a place to put residents.
mhm.
So I'm not certain with the other nursing homes where they are they admitting or are they closed at this time? And because we have 2 major factors that in all my years' experience, I never had to face. One was COVID, and the second one was this shortage that at least 50% of all the healthcare providers are gone. They're either retired or they've gone to industry. They're not working in the skilled nursing, CBRF and RCAC.
And,
Thank you.
and that's a product of things like mask mandates and vaccine mandates that's contributing to that, correct?
There are a myriad of things. I agree. I don't know what's the greater fear, getting the shot or dying from it. So I don't dying from COVID, not the shot.
Thank you.
But anyway, I don't know. if
But
you give
clearly-
it a shot, according to the latest that I've read, you're 8 times more likely not to catch COVID in a same given
But-
situation.
But bringing
But-
it back
wait,
to.
1 second. But of the people who have died from COVID, 48% were vaccinated.
But bringing it back to the labor issue,
Yes.
clearly there's a segment of healthcare workers that don't want to get vaccinated.
Yes.
And in order to be a provider in this market, because we get federal money, we can't hire them then as a result. Is that correct? Am I misunderstanding?
I didn't follow you, I'm sorry.
So we, as a provider, take federal money. We have to require all our workers to be vaccinated.
No, that's not true.
Oh, okay.
That's not.
I thought we
No.
did,
They
okay.
accept waivers.
Yeah, there are
Okay.
waivers.
So they have to apply for a waiver, a
Yes.
religious exemption
Yes.
or, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. But that still is a factor, just the mandate and,
Everything's a factor, you're
Yeah.
exactly correct.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so looking at, and I'm gonna go into staff deeper,
Okay.
but first I wanted to catch the license areas. Looking at the CBRF, the community-based residential facility, we have only 26 residents there. We have a license of 31. We have 13 self-paid. This would not be a problem finding placement. We also have 13 family care. This could be a problem. One thing extra with assisted living, family care will be more proactive in helping us find placement. Title 19 does not do that. For the RCAC, we have 21 residents, 9 are self-paid, again, would be relatively easy to find placement. 12% are family care, would be more difficult. What adds to the difficulty with family care is that every contract is different. So many of the companies don't cross county borders. So if I have a family care individual here in Washington County, it's not necessarily an automatic that I can find placement in Dodge County because they may not have a contract with them and they may not want to.
just to clarify, if ultimately closing became the path we took, we would have the option to keep the RCAC open and only close the CBRF and the skilled nursing, correct?
Yeah, you'd have the option to keep the CBRF open and or the RCAC. But it would take renovation in part to maintain the CBRF,
Yeah,
the RCAC.
because the CBRF is in the main building, the health
yes, it's
center.
on the first floor.
Yep. Okay,
Okay, so now let's look at staffing concern. I have never faced such staffing concerns. And this is the thing that has discouraged me from 2020 to now, that I'm not certain how we're going to cope with this or where there's a closure, but currently we have incentives and bonuses that started November 2021 that runs to April 2023. And that's a total of $2.3 million that we will not see a dime of. This is in addition. We are using ARPA funds through your willingness as a board and Josh Schulman's willingness to support the Samaritan campus, but it's $2.3 million that we're using, and that's coming to closure in April. So what we would be looking at, even if we close, is a time period where I will need to go back to Josh Showman and the county board to ask for additional incentives and bonuses. And I'm looking at least May 2023 to December 2023, and it could go on from there.
A quick question.
Yes,
So back in, I believe it was September for the full county board, we had a handout in our packet showing roughly 4 million in losses over the last 2 years.
yes.
So 2.3 million of that is this ARPA money that was used as incentives, correct?
Part of that, yes, that is correct. Part of that. Wherever they drew the line, when I don't remember when that financial report was, but part of those ARPA funds were included in that,
Okay,
but not all, because this goes all the way to April 23.
so,
But they didn't get that, or.
So of that 4 million, so of that 4 million, at least 1.7 million is outside of this incentives for that
Yes,
operating loss.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
yes. Today, in doing a quick analysis, it looks like we're running. I don't know if I want to do this or not, because they're all estimates at this time.
Yeah.
If I look at cash, we look like we're in skilled nursing alone, not counting ARPA funds, 1.3 million. But then I put in the profit from the RCAC and CBRF, and I put in SP that's coming December 15th of over 500,000. I have 400,000 profit, 500,000, 570,000 from SP, and I have another. I don't have the figures here. What I'm looking at, I have 500,000 that are billables we haven't collected yet. And this is the end of October 31st. We would be 100,000 to the good. Cash. By the end of December 31, cash will be in a deficit. I'm not certain how much, maybe 300,000 cash. This is a guess, okay?
okay,
But once you go beyond cash and you get into the total picture, that's when we will be somewhere in the $1.5 million in the hole for operation. And then you add all of ARPA for the incentives. That's where they're coming up with about $4 million, which is, it's a real dollar amount. And that's why it's so difficult unless you know exactly what's behind the numbers. Every time you see a document, it's hard to know exactly what are they counting, what are they not counting. So,
but if we
the
didn't,
ballpark is about 4.
but if we didn't have that ARPA money, we'd really be in bad shape. That'd be 4 million in county taxpayer money that would be going to fund Samaritan over the last 2 years, correct?
I don't know if the county board would ever have approved it.
Well, we might have made a different decision had we not had the ARPA money. That's valid too. Yep.
Yeah.
However, if the facility wasn't under the risk of closure, it wouldn't be costing you as much in ARPA money to try to retain employees. You know, if the staff felt that their future was secure, with the county, it wouldn't be costing as much as it is now.
Definitely not as much.
But there's the lack of staff too.
Yeah,
Even
Which
though.
which also plays into that. So I mean, there's
Yeah.
some you don't really, you know, be able to be,
Yeah.
it would be hard to parse that out and know how much dollars and
Yeah.
number of staff is attributed to each versus other factors.
and we talk about that staffing crises, and you said you don't know when the endpoint's gonna be.
I don't,
I don't know either, but basic economics would suggest that once the wages increase to a point where it attracts people back into the field,
And it
that'll
was
be the
stable.
endpoint. But we don't, and they gotta go through all the training and what was that?
And if it was stable, if we had
Yep.
a stable position for them that they could count on.
Yeah. So until the market gets to that point where the market wages attract people back into this career path, that shortage is gonna be there. Yeah. Yep. Not a question, a statement, yeah.
Yes.
But
But-
nothing is ever permanent, right?
right. Okay, but moving on, the second bullet in that area. We have a bonus of pickup for nurses and CNAs. And that started November 22 and it runs to 2023. And that's an additional 400,000 of ARPA funds. And if we continue, whether we're closing or continuing with one of the options, chances are I'm gonna need something like it. May not be the same. So I'm looking for, now designing something from May 2023 to December 2023. What that might look like. Okay, let's go to page 2. Okay, anyway, I wanted to give you an example of just this past pay period of November 23. And this past pay check, I want to show you an example of the high of an RN, an LPN, and a casual CNA. A casual CNA, doesn't have set hours or very few hours, must work a weekend, a pay period. This is what the RN earned. $10,201 for 2 weeks. The regular pay would have been $6,205 plus this incentive and bonus that we're talking about, which is $3,996.